So where did you come from today to attend this year's conference?
I live in Vancouver,
Oh.
so just took the SkyTrain in from Easton.
Close and handy. And tell me your story. How or why did you get into Agile?
So back in 2000, I was living in Sweden. I was working for a web product company there, and I was leading a team that was responsible for delivering delivering a module within the broader software platform, and we were following a standard waterfall process, which was what I was accustomed to. That was what the company was doing. But it did strike me as being a little absurd that here I was sitting with these Swedish developers that were writing their specifications in English, and I was correcting the grammar, and I observed that we did that, and then when we started in on the implementation, all that time spent doing documentation just kind of went out the window. I also realized that for the team that I was leading, there wasn't adequate testing resources in the company to properly test what it was we were building. And so I started looking around for information about what developers can and should do to test the software that they write, which got me interested in unit testing. I read a number of Kempbeck's articles, and that led on to learning about extreme programming. And I was reading this, and it really just kind of hit me that the way that we were building software was completely wrong, completely wasteful, and that what was described by Kempbeck, by Martin Fowler, was a much better way to build software. So when I talked to our manager and I said, I've just read about these things, this is what extreme programming is about. If we try this, then I guarantee we will be able to deliver higher quality software to you and meet the deadlines that you define. And he was a little skeptical, but agreed. And part of the way I won him over, he became the customer for our product. So we regularly met with him and reviewed our progress. And it was a dramatic transformation in our team in terms of the way that we worked together, because we started collaborating more closely. I mean, it was a real mind shift for me too, because I used to look at some of the developers on my team who were not that strong. Many of them were straight out of school, or maybe they didn't have a programming background. I mean, this was in the dot-com boom, right? Okay. So it was kind of hire your friends to build this thing. And I looked at them before, the ones who were struggling, and they would go and ask for help, and I thought, he's not a good programmer. He can't go and figure it out for himself. He needs to figure it out. Whereas making the shift to extreme programming, I realized, well, actually, this collaboration is a good thing, and we should be doing more of it. And especially after observing that the more that we collaborated, the better knowledge got disseminated, and the developers on the team made dramatic improvements in their productivity. So as a product of that shift, my team was the only team that managed to deliver on time, on budget, for the next release. And so I was a convert. From then, after leaving that company, I joined ThoughtWorks and worked as an Agile coach for a number of years.
Perfect. And why did you choose the topic you did to speak on at this year's conference?
I was asked to speak on DevOps. Yes, so this is my first time talking about DevOps. The company I work for, Pulse Energy, we follow a DevOps process, but I'm not a DevOps expert. But it was more of an experience report, so an opportunity to share our experiences with the broader community.
Perfect. And one of the themes of this year's conference is hunting agile elephants. Can you give me an example of an elephant that you found to challenge an organization?
Sure. I think most people's association with Agile is on the technical practices, things that happen within the context of a software project. So going from inception design and through to release. The challenges that we face are outside of that. So the delivery of functionality of features is not at all a challenge for us. It's more what happens before then. So figuring out what it is that's really going to deliver value to customers, and then subsequent to deployment, validating that the anticipated value is actually delivered. Those for us have been the big challenge, and I don't think that they're dealt with very well within the context of most agile methodologies. And we're operating in a startup context, which is different than where most agile projects are really focused, which is more in the enterprise, where there is a much greater division between customers and product teams. Whereas being in a startup, in a product-focused startup, you really live or die based on how successfully you can deliver products to market, especially in a market that is new, that is rapidly changing, where people are, learning about what's possible. There are no dominant players. So I've been much more interested in lean startup, and I feel like, to me, this is actually a more specific criticism of Agile. I don't see innovation happening within the Agile community. I see, like, lean startup to me is something that is full of innovation, and it's definitely borrowed from the Agile community, but it has not, I think, been embraced within the Agile community, partially because I think the ideas are too extreme for the context where most Agile projects operate. But, if you think about the history of the Agile movement, extreme programming was called extreme programming for a reason. It was perceived as being, these ideas were extreme. They were something that it really set out to push the practice beyond what was currently considered possible. And I think that the ideas coming from lean startup are doing that again. But it's taking a while for those ideas to move themselves into the broader Agile community, which is in some ways conservative.
Okay, very well put. And why don't we take a break for the next question here. And can you tell me a success story where you've seen an organization overcome an elephant?
Well, I can certainly talk about what we're doing at my company. When I started, many of it was quite quick to set up many of the Agile practices. So things that I was familiar with introducing to other teams, so things like continuous integration, regular deployments, customer demos, good customer interaction, etc. But we were really looking at what was coming next, which I think is the elephant that I perceive is all of these things that are outside of the context of a project, that are not, I think, very well dealt with within the existing literature and body of knowledge. And so for us, it's been being influenced by other startups and what kind of innovation is happening in other startups, and the way that other product companies more directly interact with their customers, the way that they track and measure how their customers are using their services, and how they feed that back into their design process. I guess the way that we're dealing with the Agile elephant is by looking outside of Agile and looking specifically at more at startups and how startups are operating, and what we can learn from them. Because to me, like, startups are a significant source of innovation, and that if you're trying to do innovative things, then the more that you can look at other companies that are doing the same type of thing and see what you can borrow, the better. And because of how rapidly changing these things are, they're not captured within a specific methodology. They're described on blog posts or at conferences where people are talking about these things.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thanks very much for your time today.
No problem.